Want to talk? So let's talk. Here. Talk. You want to talk? You gotta talk. You need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk. You want to talk.
Welcome back. It's Talk to Solomon, open line. My name is Stan Solomon and my co-host,
Chief Steve.
former Police Chief Steve Davis, and it's just the two of us and you. Our phone number 866-808-0687 if you want to give us a call. Steve, according to the feds, too few Americans are asking the federal government for help. You think that's true?
Well, that's true in their version because the federal government right now wants everyone to be controlled and at the mercy of the federal government. So I'm not sure where this really started, but it's a fact that they're asking for more people to apply for our tax dollars.
Now, let me say something I've said before, and I'll say it again. Do you understand, folks, that if the government is going to give you $1, it has to take $10 from the rest of us in order to get you $1, because government uses 90%, give or take, mostly take, of all the money it takes in for itself. So whoever is getting a benefit, whether it's a loan or a check or a building or a highway or whatever the heck it is, government consumes close to 90% of the money. Now, this came up in a conversation, and I'll get Chief's opinion. A company that I know opened a business in a new state, the state of Ohio. And they spent money to build their store. They're spending a lot of money to advertise. They hired people. They're paying taxes. They're doing all those things. They went to the local people and went through their checklist that they gave of everything they need to do in order to open their business. It turns out that the state had instituted a rule that they were starting to enforce, but just in the last year, that no one knew about. And none of the people that at the local level knew about it. In fact, none of the people at the state office knew about it. This was a quote-unquote license that cost $60. $60. They didn't get the license. They didn't know about it. Later, it became known to them that they were supposed to get this license, and so they applied for the license. Oh, no. You can't get this license because you did business before you got this license. Sorry, didn't know about it. Okay. There's a fine. How much? How much?
Way too much, whatever it is.
$100,000 for having not paid this $60 fine. Now, besides the fact that the company just said, screw you, we'll close the damn store and we'll move to the adjoining state and drop dead. And they did negotiate, but they still had to pay a lot of money. Now, here's the point. Not that the fine was unbelievable. Let's just say for the sake of discussion, they had paid the $100,000. And by the way, they had fined not this one company, they had fined hundreds of companies because no one knew about this rule. They fined everybody. Let's just say for the sake of discussion, they took in $2 million, $5 million, $8 million, $20 million. I don't know what the hell they took in. How much of that money do you think reduced the tax rate?
None of it.
How much of that money do you think was sent in a rebate?
No, none.
How much of that money was used to reduce the budget of that particular department?
None.
Hello, folks. Whenever the government fines somebody for something, whatever it is, Bernie Madoff. Oh, you dirty, rotten dog. Yes, he's a dirty, rotten dog. You did all this thing. Oh, yes. There's $1 billion fine. He deserves it. Who gets that $1 billion? Does anybody have a clue? Is it you? Did you get a check? Did you get a check? I didn't get a check. The government takes in hundreds of billions of dollars every year that they take from people for whatever. Remember when Exxon had that leaky well? Remember all that money that was spent? All that gnashing of teeth, and yes, they had to set up a fund for the people that lost things. But you know their fine of $5 billion that went to Obama and his slush fund. It didn't change the budget. It didn't reduce the deficit. Government doesn't even count that money when they do their books. Did you know that?
Sounds okay to me. That's how they do their business. Why? It's not their money. Why should they care? It's our money.
Unbelievable, folks. The reality is, no matter who they're attacking, no matter who they're taking money from, when whatever they do, however they do it, the reality is all of that money goes to the government machinery. None of it helps any of us, and none of it is given back to any of us, and none of it is used to reduce the size of government. That's the point. And we're spending $4 trillion a year. Do you think that people are getting $4 trillion worth of benefit from the government? No, they're not. You say, well, we got the military. Yes, I'll salute. We got the post office. Yes, and they do a good job. The reality is 90%, 85 to 90% of all the money taken by government from whoever they take it from is consumed by government and is of no benefit to anyone outside of government. Why do you think we now have 500,000 people that work for the government that are making over $100,000 a year in salary? Up by 50 times what it was 10 years ago. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And yet, people aren't paying attention. Now, will Romney make it all better? No. Will he make it somewhat better? Yes. Will Romney be better than Obama? Yes. Yes. Because Obama is the Antichrist. Obama is Lucifer. Obama is Simon Legree. Obama is the boogeyman. Obama is everything bad you can think of and then some. In my opinion. Now, let's hear Steve's.
Well, don't forget Cruella DeVille. He could wear her coat as well.
Absolutely. Don't let your Dalmatian...
Because he ate a dog. That's exactly right. But let's remember...
But he is black and white.
Let's remember, too, that... let's remember that all these government agencies that have imposed fines and have regulations and laws, those were all enacted either by a law that some politicians passed, or the fines are being imposed by an agency that's controlled by a politician. So people that we have elected are really creating these fines and these penalties and these permits that have to be gotten in order to run these businesses. And so the answer to this is we've got to not only just elect the right people, but stay on them 24 hours a day and make sure that we get this return to where we have less government, less regulation, less taxes, so businesses and families can thrive.
Agree totally. Let me make another point. Now, I know that this is taxing your memory. Do you remember the stimulus bill? $800 billion. Do you remember that for the 1 year, this stimulus bill was going to increase the amount of money spent in these various areas to stimulate the economy? Does anyone know if any of those increases of 25%, 1 year, government spending went up by 25%. The next year, did it come back down? Did it increase just as much on the higher amount as it had on the lower amount? Yes. And everyone forgot about it. Everyone forgot about this 1 year stimulus that was going to increase the size of government by 25% for 1 year that now has, and no one's done a thing about it. Now, will Romney do something about it? He says he will. Will Ryan do something about it? He says he will. Can we cut down the size of government by 10, 15, 20, 25%? If we do, we'll just be right back to where we were in 2008. Did you know that? If we reduce the size of government by 25%, we'd be right the same level we were in 2008, just 4 years ago.
We know the Democrats, their philosophy is win or lose, they are right at it. They are fighting. It's a war to them. It's a battle to them. When they lose, they're right back at it. When they win, they're right back at it. Republicans, on the other hand, if they win something, they take a break. They have lunch or something else. We've got to get in the same mode as them. It's a war. It's not just a debate. We've got to fight win or lose, be right back at it, and also keep our politicians' feet to the fire to make sure they're doing what we sent them there to do.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe there is a race war raging right now in America?
Absolutely, there is.
But the fact is, 98% of the people out there would say, of course not. There's nothing. We haven't heard a thing about it. There's not been 1, not 2, not 5, not 10, not 20, not 50, not 100, not 200, not 500, but thousands of cases where individuals or groups or large groups or crowds of blacks have gone out and attacked folks just because they were white or just because they were Hispanic, but mostly just because they were white. Did you know that? And it's all been covered up. Did you notice that anytime there's an event where a black person, a Muslim person, or a Hispanic person does something heinous, either kills or tries to kill one or more people, and it can be one or a group, the FBI within 12 seconds says it's not a terrorist situation, it's an individual situation. As soon as a white guy, a conservative guy, allegedly, does something, immediately, oh, this is terrorism. This is terrorism. Now, why is that? It may be. But why is it only white Christians can be terrorists, but Muslims or blacks or Hispanics or homosexuals can't be terrorists? What the hell is the definition of a terrorist? If you're trying to incite violence and panic and you attack people, sounds like terrorism to me.
Sounds like terrorism to me too.
And yet, tell them, Chief, you hear these and get these inside messages from the Homeland Security and others, which are law enforcement. What are they saying?
Well, the biggest threat that they put out is about our returning veterans that come back from serving our country in the military. And now we've seen a couple stories this week where military veterans have posted things on a blog and they've been instantly detained in some type of psychiatric review as some type of problem to the country when all they've done is written on a blog. But again, you got real acts of violence, real acts of group terrorism against white people, and oftentimes there's not even a police report made on those events.
It's unbelievable. Now, we only have a few more minutes. I'm going to talk about atheists. You know what an atheist is? An atheist is an idiot. End of discussion. Anyone that believes that everything happened by accident should not be left alone with toilet paper and a shower curtain. They're stupid. They have an I but no Q. And they say, well, prove your God exists. I said, that a moron like you is not being killed on sight? That's proof. Because if it weren't for God, I'd cut you off. Right now. Yet, atheists decided, and let me see if I can give you the quote. Here it is right here. Ready? They put up a billboard. Christianity, sadistic God, useless Savior, 30,000 plus versions of the truth, promotes hate, calls it love, atheism, simply reasonable. The billboard was up, I don't know, an hour and a half, and the sign company that took the money and said, well, we believe in the First Amendment, said, you know what, here's your money back, First Amendment or not, we don't want our building burned down. And now, I don't know if they even threatened to burn their building down, but they had to take them down. Then they had one similar insulting about Mormonism, similar insulting about anyone that believes in God. Atheists, you can always tell an atheist, you know why? Their nose is in the air, there are flies usually flying in and out, and they think their poop doesn't stink because they're so smart. They're morons. Someone says, what about Stephen Hawking? He's a disabled moron. He gets attention, and liberals are such morons, he can manipulate them by just pretending, and I don't know if he is or isn't it, because I don't know the man, but Carl Sagan was another one of these idiots that is dead, and probably in hell, saying, shoot, I should have figured this out. Now, should you love an atheist if you're a Christian?
Absolutely.
How do you show love
Well, the same way the golden rule is the answer. But you know, the atheists, if they don't believe in God, so why are they so offended at something that they don't believe exists? It's really kind of an oxymoron. So if you don't believe it exists or you don't believe in the power of it, why are you offended that people talk about it or say it? It's not harming you in any way. There's no harm in Christians talking about Christianity to atheists. It doesn't hurt them in any way. So why are they so darn offended by the whole thing?
Well, that's because they know that they're morons. That's my humble opinion. But here's my thought. If you love your child, if you love your spouse, if you love your siblings, if you love your parents, grandparents, and other family members, it doesn't mean you enable them and agree with them when they're doing something you know is wrong for them and or wrong, period. Do you? No.
You try to counsel, coach, teach, instruct, set the example.
And there is the real golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But if you were walking down a road where the bridge was out, you'd want someone to stop you, even if they had to tackle you, to keep you from, and say it was dark and you wouldn't have seen it, from falling into whatever might have been under that bridge. That is love. Love is not saying, oh, okay, whatever makes you happy, fine and dandy, how can I help you? That's not love. That's not love. It can be loving, but that's not love, in my humble opinion. You agree?
No, you're right. Just like you wouldn't let your children just take all the drugs that they wanted to take because it's going to damage them, so you have to stop them from doing that.
Rants, whatever the heck his name. What's his name? Rants? Rancid. All right, Rants Priebus, who's from Wisconsin, who's the chairman of the Democrat National Committee because he's the only name no one could spell, was on with Chris Matthews. He's the little queer that has things running up his leg. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult queers because they wouldn't want him either. But here's the reality. He was on the show, Rants Priebus was on the show with Chris Matthews, who was yelling, screaming, and hollering that all Republicans are racist because they keep saying Obama. And of course that means you're racist. Well, you can just say the white side, okay? Because you know he's half black, half white, and all fool. So they said to Rants, hey, are you going to go back on their show? He said, yeah, why not? And here's his quote, and I loved it. He said, if more than 10 people watch this show, I'd care. Now, you know that, what's the name? Chris Matthews, what's the name of the show? Hardball, yes, Hardball.
I wouldn't know that.
That show's been on longer than just about any of the others. And yet, it has no viewership. It's dead last. They brought on that moron Piers Morgan. Even he has more viewers. I think he has 12 and Chris Matthews has 10. The fact is, the guy's an idiot. His opinions are idiotic. And he's a terrible person. Now I say, hey, Solomon, he's got a bigger show than you. Not when I was on regular radio, not by a long shot. I had over 2 million people a day. He's never had 2 million people collectively in his entire life. So here's the reality. We need to start treating the media with the disdain they deserve. But we shouldn't go on their shows, ever. This whole thing about Todd Aiken, the guy that made the unfortunate comment about quote-unquote legitimate rape, what he was trying to say and didn't say well, is that if it was actually a traumatic force rape, as opposed to she was too young or she wasn't sure, but it was her boyfriend, that type of thing. In those cases, when a woman's under tremendous trauma, it is less likely, which is true, but certainly not impossible. We know that happens. At any rate, he went on one of their shows and agreed to an interview. Never do that. You have to understand, they are the enemy. Now, you ran for Congress. Remember we had this conversation?
We did.
And here's what you say. Thank you for the question. And then say whatever you want to say.
Has Obama released his birth certificate records yet?
Right. Or has that skinny guy from, I can't think of his name, the head of the Senate, Reid.
Oh,
Has Harry Reid released his tax returns? Has Harry Reid explained how he went from a pauper to a multimillionaire on a $100,000 salary? Has Nancy Pelosi, now they say, well, I just asked you what time it was. Thank you for the question. Has Harry Reid, has Nancy Pelosi, has Barack Obama, until we learn to deal with them in that way, we're wasting our time. And we're going to have more people inadvertently say something, or say something that's not quite the way they meant it, and have that used to beat him to half to death. I fault Todd Akin for one thing and one thing only, granting that interview. Why would you grant an interview to Adolf Hitler's, masseuse, and not expect the word to get back to Adolf Hitler? And that's what they are. My humble opinion.
That's a good thing to say, because if you look at this in the context of a battle or a war, and you think about what you just said, would General Patton have ever agreed to an interview with Nazi radio? There's no reason to do that at all. It's just a waste of time. You're only helping the other side. Don't help them at all.
Every Republican, every conservative listen to what's being said. And by the way, for Ilya, you don't have to listen because you never listen to questions anyway. All right. That's not nice, and Steve apologizes. All right. Let's talk about the election for just a minute here, please. Michigan is in play. Ohio is tied. North Carolina, Florida, every battleground state, there's not one of them that's in Obama's column with any degree of safety. And that's just now. At this point, Ronald Reagan was 9 points behind Jimmy Carter. And he beat Jimmy Carter by what, 10 points?
Yes, and a lot of it was because of the speeches made at the Republican National Convention. They could use the same scripts today and say them today. It would work just as well today.
I'm going to boldly project the following. The Republicans will add 7 or 8 seats in the Senate. And by the way, they'll even win Missouri if Aiken stays in. That's how much they don't like McCaskill. Romney will win the White House. That's how much America doesn't like Obama. And the Republicans will add in the House and hopefully get rid of Boehner, who sucks as Speaker. But having said all that, will that solve our problem? No. That will not solve our problem. Now, here are the caveats. Will Israel attack Iran? I hope so. Will Obama try and stop Israel? Probably. Will Obama, by executive order, legalize the illegals and give them the right to vote? Probably. Will the Republicans stand up and do what needs to be done? Probably not. What will you do? That's really the question. Because what the politicians will do is very much dependent on what the American people do. And if we stand up and stand strong, I think they'll do the right thing. Your thoughts?
Well, and also, if you're a Republican, I've been a Republican my whole life, there's nothing wrong with fixing the Republican Party. So we don't need to blindly accept what the leadership says if they're saying the wrong thing. We must encourage them, make them do and say the right thing.
Well said, and with that, we bid you good night. Thank you so much for being our guest here on Talk to Solomon. Please tell 100,000 of your closest friends. We'll be back.